Sam a heads up. Definitely.
Good evening and welcome to the November 6th City Council meeting. If you could please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Fallendorf,
Here.
Vice Mayor Herman,
Here.
Councilmember Behill,
Here.
Councilmember Matilde,
Here.
Councilmember Oliveira.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Before we go to approval of the agenda, there's a correction that needs to be made.
Regular agenda item 5D is not a second reading. It's a reintroduction, and we'd like to reintroduce and waive the first reading and set a public hearing for November 20th, the second public hearing.
Okay. There any public comment? Okay. Is there a motion to approve with the edits, tonight's agenda?
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is public comment. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda. State law prohibits the city council from acting upon matters not listed on the agenda. Is there any public comment? Nope. Oh,
I just hobbled across the street though. So, Jessica Johnston, tonight I'm here on behalf of the Angels Camp Community Club just to give you an update on our fundraising efforts for the Park Play structure. So we just concluded our Disneyland raffle on, I don't like this part. On November 3rd, we pulled a winner at the park, Moni Sagali, and we raised approximately $5,000 from that raffle. Tickets were sold at the Farmers Market, the Jason Eady concert, and the Mark Twain Wild West Fest. In August, we held the Jason Eady concert, and there were about 500 people in attendance. And the event was sponsored by Tim and Sarah Oskey, Whiskey Slide Productions, and the Angels Camp Business Association. We sold out of food, beer and wine sales were great, and we raised approximately $8,000. This event won Whiskey Slide Productions. They won the Innovations of Tourism Award for this event. And next, we'll be at the Crafty Chicks Roadshow on November 17th, running the raffle booth, and all proceeds will benefit the park project. And then we have the Christmas parade. So that's on November 24th. And the community club is going to run the photos with Mr. and Mrs. Claus. Mr. and Mrs. Kelly, they're donating their time. The Iwata family is donating the space and the electricity. It's going to be held in the old Chop Shop next to Yummy Haha. And ACPA is providing the insurance. Calaveras Lumber is going to decorate the space. Santa's Workshop will remain up until the first week in January so that it looks festive during the holiday season downtown. And we are going to ask a $5 donation for photos and sell cocoa and cookies. So this is where we are seeking the help and support of the city. We are asking for you to provide water and sewer services so that we can clean the building and use the restroom during the event. In addition, we are currently seeking grant funding and planning to do a larger event next spring. So total to date, we have raised $17,000 from fundraising, selling totes and donations, and there's $163,000 to go. So we just want to thank you for your continued support and the consideration of the water and sewer services.
can we put that on the next agenda? Or how do,
Yeah,
because if the, yeah.
If we can put that next agenda and then also waive permit fees.
So we could look at, I think we have waived the permit fees for the Angels Community Club. But I can look into the water and sewer, but I'm not quite sure how we would do that, or if we have the capacity to waive water and sewer connection fees to a business. And then we do have public restrooms downtown. And then I think it raises questions about a use permit, and, you know, I think that there's a lot of questions to be answered, but we can bring it before you with all of those questions answered, if that's the direction of the council.
Can it be done ministerially? If not, we have to bring it to this.
We'll make that determination.
Okay.
Okay. We're good?
So,
Okay. Any other public comment? Nope. Okay. Item number 4, consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. Is there any public comment? Any council comment?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. On to our regular agenda. Item A, approval to continue the Angels Camp Police Department 2 K-9 unit program. Scott.
Good evening, Council. Scott Ellis, Chief of Police, Angels Camp Police Department. So I'm recommending that we continue with our current program and the status of 2 K-9 unit teams. Trying not to go too far into the background, but Chief Fordall handled the dog for approximately 7 years, at least 7 years, while he was Chief of Police here at Angels Camp, and handled the dog prior to that time as well. During the course of my being hired here as a sergeant and him planning on leaving, speaking with him, we made arrangements that I would basically take over his position, and he allowed me to research and look into getting a police dog, which we did make arrangements with a local vendor to do. Obviously, at this point in time, I understand that we probably maybe overstepped a little bit. I didn't realize that at that time, but just wanted to clarify with you guys that was kind of just the route that I was directed to go by him, or was allowed to go by him. So we did obtain a police dog. We paid a down payment out of our K-9 association fees, which is not a city fee. It's a 501c3 account. That's the Turtle Rock Police Department K-9 Association, which was put together by Officer McDermott of the police department. So we have that account that's already been created. So anyways, we went ahead and we got the dog, and I've had the dog for about a month. Not working him or anything like that. I've just basically been, anytime you get a new dog, there's a bonding period. So he's just been hanging out with me at home and around the PD, but not going out on any calls or anything like that. So as of right now, there's absolutely no impact on the current budget with this attaining this dog and moving forward with this dog. The monies that were already allocated were allocated with the assumption that we had 2 police K-9 teams in town. The dogs that we get, so I just want to talk a little bit about the dogs. The dogs that we get are dual purpose, so they serve multifaceted roles for the police department. They're narcotics dogs, so they search and find and locate narcotics, or use it as a locating tool, not only for narcotics, but for people as well. We've had many successful apprehensions, K-9 narcotic locations. I know Officer McDermott, her first week in the school, found marijuana in one of the lockers during a search with the dog. And she could talk about, all the apprehensions and stuff they have, but I know that Chief Fordall had numerous apprehensions. And when I say apprehension, I don't mean that somebody got bit. I mean the dog was a tool that was used in order for us to successfully arrest somebody or detain them or keep them from running or keep them from harming anybody else. one of my biggest things with the police dog, especially in an agency like Angels Camp, is officer safety. This agency, I came from the valley, so it was a little bit different, and there was a lot more officers around. Agency like this, we work by ourselves a lot of the time, and our backup may be anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes away, depending on where they might be coming from, because it's likely going to be a sheriff's department deputy that maybe have to respond from Arnold or Copperopolis or something like that if we start calling for assistance. Having a dog on scene with us is a tool that we can use to help keep ourselves safe, along with, other officers. They're also a huge deterrent of crime just in their own presence. Just the fact that a dog is there, people are less likely to fight and they're less likely to run from us. So that not only saves the city in a lot of ways, because the potential of me going hands-on or an officer going hands-on with someone escalates the potential for somebody getting injured, whether it's me or whether it's a suspect, if we end up in a tussle with somebody. I was my first day here, I was actually in plain clothes riding out with Sergeant Adams, and he got into a tussle with the guy. And had I not been there with him, there was a good chance that tussle or fight could have gotten somebody hurt. Luckily, there was two of us there, and we were able to, calm the situation and get the guy into custody. Some of the concern, I believe, is probably the fact that I'm the chief of police and I'm the new chief of police, and how am I supposed to manage being the chief of police and also handling a police dog. I've been in law enforcement for almost 18 years now. During the course of my career, at one point while I was in Turlock, I was a corporal, I was a field training officer, I was a SWAT team member, and I was also a canine handler, and managed all of those things without two thoughts about it. I realize this is a different aspect of that because of the administrative work and the managerial duties that are included in this job. But as of right now, I'm a patrol officer. I'm working the streets every day by myself most of the time, just like any of the other officers that would. And that's the nature of the role of this chief position, just because of the size of our agency and the fact that we don't have a lot of officers on the street. I know Chief Fordall filled that role pretty much the same way. When someone takes vacation or when we have an officer out on training and somebody calls in sick, well, he's working the street again, and I don't see that changing. And I take that role on knowing that was the case with this job. I didn't take this job planning to sit behind a desk all day and go to meetings all day, 8 hours a day. But I just want to reassure the council that I can manage both. And I do so without hesitation. It's not just because I say I can do it, it's because I have a love and drive to be a canine handler. I was a handler in Turlock for 4 years and dedicated a lot of time to being a handler. The other positive aspect of that is I've done it before, so it's not like I'm a new handler that doesn't know the ins and outs of being a dog handler. It's pretty much, I don't want to say it's plug and play, because there's a lot of training that goes on and getting the dog up to speed and learning and understanding and knowing what he's supposed to be doing. So there is that portion of it. But I guess I just will add to, I worked in Puerto Rico, and I managed over 200 people, helped manage over 200 people, and was able to balance the duties and responsibilities of being the manager of 200 people. I did all the scheduling, I did a lot of the hiring, I did a lot of the firing, and that was never being overwhelmed or overburdened and not being able to do the job was never an issue, and never has been an issue for me. The schooling I know that's involved in this position also, I've enrolled myself into a course. It's a 3-week course. It's 1 week a month for 3 months, starting in January, February, March, and I'll be done with 50% of the required training for this position, the management course. And then within a year, I'll hopefully have the executive leadership course done, which is also a 2-week course, 1 week a month for 2 months consecutive. So I guess that's my spiel for this position. I just see a very good need and importance of our canine club. I feel like we have strong community support for it. My understanding is Chief Fordall did an excellent job doing both, managing the police department for 7 years, which is kind of a long time for anybody in the chief world. I don't think the norm for chiefs, I think the average is usually about 4 to 5 years. And he was able to do it for 7 and probably could have gone longer had he taken the path to stay around and work a few extra years. I guess that's all I have. If anybody has any questions for me.
Can you talk about costs? Explain more about the costs associated.
So the costs associated are the purchase of the dog and the training for the dog. The primary costs, so the primary cost. The purpose of our 501c3 and our donation fundraising nonprofit account is to raise money in order to make the purchase for the dog, and the training and my training that I will do with the outside vendor, which won't interfere with my current duties, because the training that I can attend can happen on my days off. The training is in Modesto, where I currently live, so it won't affect my work schedule or my ability to be at work on my scheduled work days. Other costs are the costs that we currently budgeted for, which is the monthly training that the dogs attend, and their food, and any medical needs that may arise. I believe the current budget for the canine program is $7,900 a year.
For both dogs?
For both dogs. That's what was budgeted for this year, and that's the budget that we would that we would stay within.
So you've got 5 weeks of training a week at a time, and you can do it on your days off? Is that what you're telling me?
My training likely won't be 5, you mean with the dog?
Yeah.
Yeah, my training likely won't be 5 weeks, and I can go 2 days a month. So it could take a while to get the dog certified, to where he's able to work the streets. But I would go, 1 or 2 days a week until it's basically when the dog and handler are ready. There's not a specified time. It's just when the team is ready to certify. There's a certifying agency that you go to, and they run you and the dog through tests, and when you pass them, then you're certified.
Tell us a little bit about the dog that we've got.
The dog that we got is
Cocker Spaniel?
the dog that we got is a 2-year-old Belgian Malinois German Shepherd mix. Very high, very energetic. I went down and we do what we call selection testing, and just running the dog through some basic drills just to see what their drives are like, to make sure that he has the right drives for the profession. Obviously, the vendors also do the same thing before. They do a medical clearance before we get the dogs. They supplied us with a disc with the X-rays showing no, hip dysplasia or any of the typical symptoms that these types of dogs sometimes come over here with, honestly, overseas. The dog came from Europe. I'm not sure exactly where in Europe. The vendor who we're purchasing him from is a vendor out of Modesto that we also use for our training, our monthly upkeep training.
So, I think, speaking for me, my only concern was the advanced certification and executive management training we were asking you to do. You're new to the job, and in the beginning, the sense was, let's hold off on that. But given what you said today, I'm pretty comfortable with everything that needs to happen, has happened, so I'm good with it.
I'd like to know, what is your timeline estimation of getting up to speed, getting that certification, getting that dog active in our community and being a police officer? I know that dogs are active officers.
Being a canine team?
Yeah. Because I'd like to see it as soon as possible, of course, but I know you have a lot on your plate.
Well, and it's just a matter of how often can we get to the trainings, and how much training can we get in. I've been doing stuff by myself, with him at home and things like that, just some basic obedience to get him, start to get him ready for all the other associated training. I would expect maybe within 3 months, just because we're talking 1 to 2 days a week maybe of training with the vendor to get the actual training. I'm forecasting as long, as long out as I can think. I don't want to underestimate and it take longer.
Yeah, I think the biggest point that resonates with me is one, is your safety on the job, and two, is it would help relieve or reduce the chances that a workers' comp claim is down the line. If you're not having to chase somebody, and if you're not, you're being protected, to me, that's huge. That's a cost savings we can't really put a number on right now, but it could be big dollars.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I've seen it happen both ways where officers have gotten hurt, and then when officers have not gotten hurt because maybe a bad guy that we know likes to tussle with the cops decides not to tussle with the cops because the dog's there.
Right.
Is there any public comment?
What's his name?
His name is Ryder,
Ryder.
R-Y-D-E-R. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Officer McDermott from Angels Camp Police Department. This is my canine partner, Thor. Thor's been with our department for approximately 3 years and then partnered with me for about a year after Steve Portinga left. March of last year, Thor and I became certified together in narcotic detection, criminal apprehension, tracking, and handler protection. Our first week together, the Sheriff's Department had made a traffic stop here in Angels Camp where the male driver was on probation and currently wanted for several felony warrants. During the course of that contact, the suspect became non-compliant, resulting in the deputy with 2 broken ribs and a secondary deputy with injuries to his arm. That suspect took off running on foot, and Canine Thor was called in to assist. Thor was able to track that suspect, locate him under a box truck, and the suspect refused to come out from underneath the truck when asked several times. Thor was able to climb under that box truck, grab a hold of that suspect, pull him out from under the truck so we didn't have to go under there to get him, and he was safely taken into custody with no other officers being injured. On May 18th, just a couple of months later, I noticed a suspicious vehicle parked on the side of the road. A female driver informed me that she had been held at knife point for the last few hours and forced to drive a male subject around town. She said the man was currently on parole, wanted for felony warrants, and still armed with a large hunting knife. The suspect was later located running through the trailer park and ignored all commands to stop. Thor at that time was deployed from the vehicle, which he runs to my side, and I told the suspect again to stop or the dog would be sent. At that time, the suspect made the smart decision to give up, lay down on the ground, and he was taken into custody with no officers being injured during that time. On June 24th, Thor was requested by the Sheriff's Department to assist in locating 2 suspects that we were informed were wanted for home invasion up in Murphy's. I'm not sure if you guys remember that case. These suspects had tied up and tortured their victims before they robbed them. The Sheriff's Department and CHP had chased the suspects to Valley Springs, where they had fled from their vehicles and into the woods. Thor was able to track these suspects for approximately an hour before locating them in a heavy patch of blackberry bushes. After announcing to the suspects that the dog would be sent, they wisely came out of the bushes and were safely taken into custody. And again, no officers were injured. Those suspects were armed, they were known gang members, and had just robbed and tortured their victims. No one was hurt that night. I have many similar stories for Thor and I. I have many similar stories from Chief Fordall and Cato that he had done as well. Angels Camp Police Department, we have 1 officer on at night, just 1. Even when we're fully staffed, most of the time we're alone. Our backup, we rely on the Sheriff's Department, which is Copper, Arnold. Most of the time they're on calls of their own, so they can take long periods of time to come help us out. These dogs, just the mere presence of having them in their vehicle can change a suspect's demeanor just right on the spot. Nobody wants to fight the dog. These dogs are our backup, they're our partners, they're our friends, and they're a benefit to this community. Whatever officers do you know that'll work for Milk Bones and Attaboys? So these dogs may appear expensive for some of you, but the liability to the agencies but the cost of these dogs don't even compare to the cost of saving a human life. Thank you.
Nice job, Thor.
Yeah. Yay, Thor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Trevor Rolla. It sounds like most of the council's in the same mind as myself, so I might be wasting your time, and I apologize. But As a member of the Bret Hart High School staff, I would like to just give you my view of having the dogs on campus and in the community as a whole. Last year and previous to having dogs in proximity of students, in my location of campus, we would probably have 2 to 3 reports a month of people smoking marijuana in the restrooms near the ag department. This year to date, we've had 0. I think largely our instances of illegal drugs on campus has gone down tremendously. Of students being intoxicated on drugs or alcohol at school has gone down tremendously with the addition of a dog. But more so than that, and something that hasn't been touched on aside from the apprehension rates and the safety of the officers, is the relationship that these dogs build with our young members of the community. Working the football games each week at the home games, I've seen the interaction between the students and the officers shift this year from previous years. After 3 years of working games, students would always take a wide berth around the officers. It's authority figures, it's police officers, it frightens them, and they're always a little bit suspicious. Since introducing a dog regularly in our community, on campus especially, students now approach Officer McDermott to talk to the dog, to pet the dog, and then are basically forced into a conversation with the police officer that develops a positive relationship between our Angels Camp Police Department and those students. And that relationship carries forward. So this isn't obviously a discussion of whether or not to keep a dog on campus, that's not in question, but when you're talking about introducing a second dog, for the amount of cost versus the benefit of the relationship of young members of our community with our police department, I think that goes forward as well in terms of aggression towards the police and risk to our officers when they have a positive relationship with our community. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Are there any other public comment before I bring it back to council? No? Okay. I see the dog as a great asset to this community and the department. I think the concern came from the workload that we were asking the new chief to take on. I don't think the question was ever about not wanting the dog. It's ensuring that he was able to walk into a new position and do his job at 100%. If there's no concern for the workload, which there doesn't seem to be in your presentation, and you're able to meet the staffing requirements, along with adding the additional safety until we can staff our PD to the numbers that we need, I believe that going forward that the consensus of the council is to support this program. And I'll go back to the rest of the council if there's any other objections or comments before I bring it to a vote.
I have a comment. One thing I'm very supportive of, I went to the Coffee and Donuts, Chief Ellis, and that was really informative and helped. And a lot of the community members came, and Bob and Susan Morse, they emailed me and said that they couldn't come tonight, and they really wanted to come to support this program and wanted to make sure that I mentioned that they not only supported, they could see the safety factor for our officers because they are alone a lot, and they really got that understanding, and said that they were willing to even contribute to the fund. So they just wanted to know, let the officers know that. Okay.
Any other council comment before I bring it to a vote? No?
I'll-
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll move that we authorize the Angels Camp Police Department to continue fundraising for the new K-9 to replace Cato.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Go Ryder.
That's going to be good.
Okay. On to our next agenda item, approval of contract amendment with Vital Wells Associates for the wastewater connection fee study, not to exceed $20,000.
Staff recommends the council consider this item. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And then this is in addition to the rate study that is currently underway right now. So with that, I'll turn it over to the council, but I request your approval.
So this is an amendment So we authorized, a couple of years ago, we authorized this whole wastewater, water connection study, the whole thing. Why are we coming back with an amendment now? Isn't this already authorized?
So you authorized the amount with Bartle Wells for the rate study, and then it was believed that, because these contracts were negotiated 2 years ago, that there was also a contract with NV5 negotiated for the connection fee study. Since that time, NV5 has sort of been sold to different partners. The status of our contract, they are not aware of. I contacted them for information, and they are not aware that there is a contract or that they had a contract. We cannot locate a contract, and so this is for the connection fee study, which is separate from the scope that we have for the rate study. And so I contacted NV5, we contacted Weber Geo, and we contacted Bartle Wells, and Bartle Wells was interested in doing the work for this amount. The amount identified includes a level of efficiency, given the fact that they've already done some financial analysis and are familiar with our current structure and systems. So that's where we are. Yeah, we entered into these agreements 2 years ago, and so on both ends, this contract has been lost track of over the years.
And in the interest of transparency, why do we need a wastewater connection fee study?
Well, because we need to look at the current rates that we charge and make sure that they are substantial enough to cover the costs of expansion of our current system.
Expanding the current system?
Our wastewater connection fees, and make sure that they are able to afford the costs of the connections.
Okay, all right, so that's going to expanding the existing,
Yes.
the
So-
capacity of this existing
Yes.
system?
So these are development-driven fees versus the ratepayer fees, which are operations and maintenance related.
I thought we
So
did
we
that
would-
already.
So, well, I'm confused because this, from what I understand, we already have more capacity at our wastewater plant than we can even deliver because of our piping system. So why are we studying expansion of the capacity of the wastewater plant?
So, connection fees would, when you have new users who are coming on, so some of the capacity would be for infill development and things of that nature, or for the folks who are already being serviced. So, meaning that, so this would just go and set, because you have cost of construction goes up, cost of the salaries go up, and so the water, the connection fees, which has to be by law a nexus between what you're charging and what it actually, we can't make money on it, we can just pay for what it actually costs. So the new folks who come on would have to pay for future expansion beyond what you even have, because.
And therein lies my concern. We're doing this, we did the same thing with the traffic study. If I understand this correctly, and please someone correct me if I'm wrong, we have a sewer plant that can handle more than the capacity we have now. They can handle more than we're going to reasonably develop over the next 10 or 20 years. We have a problem with a bottleneck in the sewer pipes that we cannot add more. We can't add any more units right now to the system until we get the pipes repaired. So I'm not real excited about paying money for a study to find a connection amount for a future capacity when we can't even fill the capacity we have. I'd rather table this particular thing for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years until we can expand our pipeline to the sewer system.
So I'll let Amy go ahead, and then I think too that, go ahead.
I believe that this study for the connection fees actually does include capital improvements, which would include improvements to the delivery system, such as improving the bottleneck.
I thought we already had that study, and that was mentioned in the report at the last meeting.
The study is, but in order to fund it, to fund the improvements that study has identified, that is what I understand this money is to be used for.
Yes, and the nexus between what we're charging and the cost of those improvements, which are identified in the wastewater master plan.
But we already talked about the cost of those improvements are improvements that expand the capacity, so they're going beyond, they're in the future, beyond anything that we even can consider needing right now.
So-
We're hitting our city with a big dollar amount And I want to make sure we're not funding stuff that's 30,
Yes.
40 years down the line.
So what I could commit to is the same thing that we're doing with the rate study. So the direction was to evaluate the master plans and the CIP, make a determination how realistic those infrastructure plans are and if they're pie in the sky. So we're working with Weber Gio, our city engineers now. We're doing an evaluation of what we know existing need and what we know of that sort of CIP, the capital improvement plan, on the operations and maintenance side. So development projects can't pay for, those fees can't pay for the rate payer's responsibility in terms of existing operation and maintenance. That's one side of the house. So what we could commit to you as well on the connection fee side is when we evaluate those rates, we're also evaluating that CIP to make a determination as to whether it's grounded in a reasonableness based on what we know to be true on the ground. So that meeting on the rate side we just had between our sewer operator, our public works foreman, our city engineer, myself, Amy Augustine, and we're doing as directed, scrubbing those plans so that we're not hitting our consumers or our customers with an over-exaggerated capital plan over a 5-year period. We could do a similar thing on this piece, but I think we need to look at the cost associated with the construction of these projects. I think one of the things that was echoed in the water wastewater master planning studies is, though you've adopted them in 2012, the consensus around the table is, well, that information is dated and old information. So we're sort of behind. You know, as I mentioned, these contracts were entered into 2 years ago. So we're sort of dealing with the best we can at this moment in time. And I think that with the information they have of our current infrastructure and our current system, I would like to move forward analyzing the costs of the projects that this project team and I evaluate and vet. And we can bring to you that presentation as well. On the rate side, we're coming to you on December 4th, and Weber Gio is giving you a presentation on the state of your system from an operation and maintenance perspective. And we're going to really gut check that and reality check that presentation with the amount identified in the rate study as to $1 million a year over a 5-year period of time. How realistic is that? And so after that presentation, then we'll bring to you the rate study and that recommendation, and then we'll also bring to you the subsequent recommendations for rate increases. So we could follow a similar path here, and that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
And you're right, from what I hear, our issues are not capacity at the plant. We are struggling drastically with issues in the delivery system, and those are both capital and operational. So when we're increasing pipe size, for example, the master plans call for us to increase pipe size. If we have 8-inch pipe now, the recommendation is to go to 10-inch. So that's both operational and capital that have to contribute to the delivery of those systems. I think one of the numbers we talked about just today for one segment through downtown is $1 million if we're going to replace that. So we need to make sure that both on the rate side and the development side, they're paying appropriately their proportional share for the cost of those expenses. So it may not be that it's associated with infrastructure plant capacity. It could be very well the delivery of our existing infrastructure. And then also
The capacity of your pipes.
the capacity.
Right.
And then also, let's not forget, we have a kind of growth area that we're focused on at the 449 intersection, which is going to increase capacity. We've got $50,000 to study that capacity, and then also, I think, coordinate it with this study, what those improvements are.
Do we know what
So
percentage
it's-
of the sewage capacity we're using right now at the plant, not the pipes?
I don't know that information. Capacity at the plant, I don't know.
I don't know the capacity either, but the improvements are not to make it bigger or to increase capacity. It is to allow it to operate efficiently enough so that it can realize the capacity for which it was designed. It's really not to expand capacity, it's to make it operate at capacity as it was planned to do.
Okay, I want to make sure that that's actually the case, because we already heard this, to expand capacity somewhere out in the future, and I'm not interested in that. I don't think we should be.
I have not
Well, and I
heard
don't
that in
believe
any
it's
meeting.
expanding the capacity of the plant, but we definitely need to look at our delivery system
And the
and
efficiency
its capacity
of
to
the
provide for that.
operations. Yeah.
Because I think right now, what's the status of the general plan and our ability to add development and add connections as it exists right now.
We have to improve the delivery is the primary.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to
And the
make sure that that's,
efficiency of the
That's-
existing
that's where I'm going
plan.
with this, exactly.
Yes.
Thank you.
I agree with you, and thank you for the clarification, because it sounded originally like you were questioning exactly what,
Okay.
Is there any public comment? No? Okay. Is there any further council questions or comments? No?
where's
Okay.
the $20,000 coming from?
It's already been approved in
It's
the
in the
budget,
budget.
and I
Okay.
think it's been in the budget for multiple years
Okay.
now.
Any other
Correct, and
questions?
it does come from the enterprise funds. It's not general fund related. Thank you for clarifying that.
Right. And my only reason for any pushback on this, since we approved it 2 years ago,
Yeah.
was that, again, we have a large fee study. I want to make sure that we are doing everything possible to make sure that we're only funding the needs right now as we work our way through the rest of it. Okay.
And we will make that an action item, that we follow a similar template with the rate study and do an analysis internally as staff of those master plans and bring to you that presentation first before we bring to you the study and what the basis for it is.
Okay. If there's no further comment or discussion, is there a motion?
I move approval of this contract amendment.
Is there
I'll
a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item C, authorization of $5,000 for additional cost of single audit and engagement of a consultant to assist the city in preparation for a single audit and the amount not to exceed $15,000. Emily?
Hi. So entities that receive federal funds are subject to audit requirements commonly referred to as single audits. The idea is that auditees are subject to one audit of all of their federal programs versus separate audits for each federal program, hence the term single audit. With the extra work necessary for the single audit, the city's auditor, Larry Bain, CPA, requires an additional $5,000 to complete the additional audit procedures. Since I do not have any single audit experience, and it's been 10 years since Mike's last single audit, hiring VTD certified public accountants would be in the best interest of the city. Larry Bain is unable to serve in this capacity because he needs to remain independent. VTD could serve in a capacity to provide management with support and advice in audit preparation. Staff recommends approval of their contract, which is attached, in the amount not to exceed $15,000. They will prepare us to ace the audit, and they'll train me to be completely prepared for future single audits of the city. I believe it's in the best interest of the city to prepare itself best it can to prevent loss of future federal funding.
Is there any council questions?
Yeah, is this, if you bring this consultant on board, do they stand with you shoulder to shoulder during the audit with respect to demands from the auditors? And
I believe they could if we requested that of them.
is that
they-
included in the
yeah.
number that we're being asked?
Yes, yeah,
to
so
quote?
their contract would be exactly, yeah.
So in the end, we hire them, they prep us for the audit. And they stand shoulder to shoulder with us while it's being conducted. Okay.
So you're being trained, they're prepping, you're being
We're gonna-
trained, and they're standing with you, so, okay. Just wanted to make sure that,
And they're going to help me create sound processes and procedures and policies to make sure that we will pass any audit in the future as well.
okay.
So get us all set up so we are neat and tidy, and our federal funding. We have lots of federal projects on the horizon, really exciting transportation projects, CDBG grants, that all is all federal funding.
So this is a pressure on the general fund,
It is.
and can you kind of give us an overview of where we stand with the general fund at the moment?
We were about 900,000-ish as of, we're obviously still auditing last year at the close of the end of the year. That's just very ballpark number, but I can get back to you with something.
Well, we were looking for some regular reporting, and I know the workload has been incredible, but when we when we get these pressures, it'd be helpful to me to say, here's where we are, here's what it's going to affect the budget. Plus, there's other things going on in the background where hopefully we're saving some money. So, there's a plus and a minus to this as we go through, and would like to see that when these kinds of pressures are brought forward, so we get a sense of, where we are.
Yes, and so Emily, when we approved the final budget, do you remember the general fund, how negative we were?
That one. I thought you were talking about the fund balance. It was,
If you don't know, don't worry about it. Just get back to us.
yeah, I can get back to you. I don't remember.
The budget was $74,000 underwater.
But then we had the budget amendment once we get brought up to 40.
Right.
So this is going to increase your general fund deficit by an additional $15,000. This wasn't identified in the budget, and it'll definitely be increasing that general fund deficit.
And what we need to do-
20, sorry, you're correct. Thank you.
What we need to do is take another look at the end of 2018 and see where we are there. We believe that we're going to be better than we said we were initially. We probably, maybe the next meeting, we can give you a snapshot of where we think we are as far as the end of the year, whether we're in the hole ahead. We believe that, right now, we believe that the reserves will be at about $900,000.
Okay, but going forward, when the pressures are presented, give us a snapshot of the impact in the overall picture. That'd be really helpful, I think.
You can do that.
Yeah, there was a time when we were getting quarterly quarterly reports, and I believe they were 2 months after the quarter. So if the
Yes.
quarter ended September 30th, the end of November, or 1st of December, we were getting a quarterly report.
We can do that.
I think that'd be great. Thanks. Also, I have a question. It says here that non-federal entities that expend $750,000 or more during the year of federal funds have to have this audit. And it says we are approaching this threshold. Did we reach that threshold? And if so, what projects were, can you remind us what projects were funded?
Can you go to the podium? Yes, thank you. So we have 3 projects specifically that brought us over the threshold. 2 of them were CMAQ grants. One was for the Murphy's Grade Road project, one was for the sidewalk project, and then the other one was for the fire truck, the CDBG grant for the fire truck.
Damn fire truck.
His favorite thing.
There's your truck.
It was free.
It was mostly the truck.
So
Let that be a lesson to all you people that are going to be here in a month. There's no such thing as a free lunch or a fire truck.
Look good holding that
So we had to do an audit, right?
Yeah.
So we will make those action items, the quarterly reports. We'll show that as our action item. And then also, we will give you an update on the balance of the general fund deficit. My recollection was it was near 40. This will probably take it to $60,000 deficit within your current general fund. So I think that that's important, because this was an unanticipated cost. And so I tend to look at our finances and our budgets very conservatively. We get a lot of asks throughout the months for more money or different things. So this is, I think, a good example for a conservative approach to our budget early on, because these unanticipated things pop up and it's $20,000 added to that deficit amount. So we will bring that information to you as an action item and a follow-up to this item.
Can we take that out of the fire chief's budget? Back there.
Oh, he just ducked.
Just giving you a look.
He's going to give you, he's going to give the evil eye.
If there's no other questions or comment?
I just think that we need to move in that direction. I think it's really helpful for Emily, and because for our future, to be able to have this training as well as accomplish it. and Emily's doing such a good job, and there's a lot to learn, so however we can help you, that's what we want to do.
If there's no other comment, is there a motion?
Okay.
I'll move the item.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did you get? Okay. Item D,
This is the one you did.
huh?
This is the one that was a,
It's not a public hearing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the one.
it is a public hearing.
Oh, okay.
The reintroduction,
Jen.
first reading,
Reintroduce.
and adoption of ordinance
Wait a
481.
second.
Thank you, what he said.
Madam Mayor, council members, I'm not requesting additional funds.
That's a good lead-in.
Staff is bringing this back for a second time. It has already been to the Planning Commission twice and was recommended for approval. This is for consistency with your general plan that was adopted in 2009. We still have approximately 200 parcels out there that have not yet been rezoned to be consistent with the general plan. We're going to throw a slight monkey wrench into this. We are going to ask that you remove 7 parcels from the proposed zoning. They are parcels located at the corner of Monteverde and Stockton Road. We had a choice when we did the general plan. There's industrial land, and then there is residential land. What we chose to do was go from industrial to light industrial to residential. The people who actually live there have asked us that instead we go from industrial to light industrial to to multifamily residential to residential, to change the way we would progress the land uses and the land use compatibility. And in response to their request, we did a site visit and concurred with their request. And so we were asking that the following parcels be removed from the rezoning request. Parcel 58, 16, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 22, and 24. In addition, in renoticing this, we had some questions, and I'll go ahead and defer to Susan to read into the record the letter that we received from one of the adjoining property owners. Their parcel is not being proposed for rezoning. They would be an adjoining property owner.
This letter dated November 5th from Adam and Stephanie Kopp of 660 Murphy's Grade Road. They spoke in their letter in opposition to the rezoning of the parcels.
And the letter refers to these parcels in this area, these two that are, I'm going to put both of them together just because we've heard from both property owners indirectly. There had been a pre-application for some development on these parcels. This rezoning is not about that application, which we have not yet received an application formally. But I know that there were some concerns expressed about what might come in on those parcels. And other than that, be happy to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, I would ask that you approve this, waive the first reading, set the second reading for November 20th, 2018, and go ahead and take public input at this time.
You slow down there a minute. It whizzed right by me about what the significance of this letter was.
Yes.
As it relates to this, what you're asking of us today. That particular parcel is 057-2314 that they're concerned about in the letter?
Yes.
And it's not listed,
It is not one that is being rezoned.
right?
It is adjoining a property that is proposed to be rezoned.
So our action with respect to their concerns is what?
A planner's recommendation to you would be that we would wait until we received an actual application for a development, and then we would be coordinating with the landowners to get their input and try to define any development that might come in on those parcels to make it blend in with the neighbors and their concerns.
Okay.
Right now, it would be speculation on our part. as to what might come in on the parcels.
Okay.
Do we have any comments from the landowners who are being affected?
The adjoining ones, that letter, and I imagine we may or may not have anybody here to speak. I don't know until we open the public hearing. I think their request was they wanted to remain more rural. And obviously, we have Columbia College has their parcels right adjacent also. Our vision for that area is that it not remain rural, but in fact be something like a vocational school. The school has in fact contacted us, Columbia College, the Yosemite Community College District, and discussed the potential developments that might occur around them. And they were excited about having this as an adjoining property designation, the BAE. They felt that was quite consistent with their future plans, so.
Well, the BA, it allows a little bit more flexibility than the SC does, right? And SC is not rural at all.
No, that's shopping center commercial and.
Right.
Yeah.
So these people want something more rural or asking for something that doesn't exist now. So it's kind of hard to object to a change that's might actually offer a little more flexibility or lighter industrial or even some residential.
Correct. And I do want to emphasize, it is BAE in the general plan, and it has been since 2009. This is only to make the zoning consistent with what is already the general plan.
Got it.
How do we interpret this, that they were advised by city staff that there'd be protections in place? What's that all about?
It is my understanding that prior to purchasing the property, that the people who wrote this letter met with my predecessor, and he explained to them what the BAE zoning district included, and that it was sort of a campus-like setting, a landscape type of a light industrial use. So that is my understanding of what was represented to them. Other than that, I can only say that it has been given the general plan land use designation since 2009. So prior to purchase of any property, this has been out there and mapped and is available for the public to have known what might be going in adjacent.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, can you please tell me again which parcels were going to be taken out?
Yes, I will in fact give you a highlighted copy. And we will have a new, by the 20th, in the second reading, we'll have a new exhibit to go with the ordinance that removes those parcels. But again, those parcels were parcel 5816-12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 22, and 24. They are all adjacent to each other, and they are all at the tip of Monteverdi and Stockton Road, right where I'm pointing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments before we open up to public hearing? No? Okay. Open the public hearing. Is there any public?
Good evening, Debbie Pawnee, Executive Director of Destination Angels Camp. So our board will be reviewing this and writing a letter, one way or the other, for the November 20th. But I do want to speak on behalf of being the Executive Director and asking that we continue this road and get this project completed. It's very difficult when you are talking to developers and you look at the general plan and you assume all of the zoning codes have gone into play, and to find out later, it's very difficult to backtrack as to what was done or not done. So this is a high priority for Destination Angels Camp Board to take a look at this at our meeting in November next week, to be able to write a formal letter in support of moving forward with this particular zoning. What Amy addressed earlier about those particular exhibits, we were in support of having those removed as well. So, but we'll have some formality at the November 20th, but I can't stress enough making sure that that we are in compliance with our general plan, because it is very difficult when you are talking to potential developers, buyers of land, looking at maps, and assuming that everything is in place and finding out later it is not. it's not healthy for economic development going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay. Public hearing closed. Back to council.
I have a question. Many years ago, there were, I want to say 4 parcels near the old schoolhouse north of town. And the owners, after the general plan was passed, after 2009, the owners objected to the new zoning. And they were told that it would be about, at the time, about $75,000 city hit if we were to put the zoning back to where it was, or to leave it where it was. And I remember saying, sorry, the general plan went through, you guys are too late. And here we've got 7 parcels, and we're allowing them to keep the zoning that was pre-general plan. Is that something?
We're actually yes and no, in that it's a hodgepodge in that particular area of the various zones. We will have to go back and change the general plan for those 7 parcels, and
Will there be a cost to the city to do that?
no, because in conjunction with doing our rezonings, we will bring these general plan amendments forward, and they will all be exempt from CEQA, so the amount of time that staff has to spend is minimal. So, no.
Makes me want to reach out to those 4 landowners and see if they still want to put it back to,
And
if there's not a cost, it was their.
And
No.
yes, we certainly can. The general plan is not in stone. You can do general plan amendments, and where it makes sense, we certainly can pursue them. And I'm aware of the parcels that you're talking about, and
Okay.
we'd be happy to reach back out to them and see if they want a different general plan designation and take care of that. Theirs might be, depending upon their request, a little more complicated. It might be subject to CEQA, but I suspect not. I suspect we can find something.
We were told by your predecessor that it would be $75,000, different impact reports, all kinds of stuff. And it was a very difficult vote to turn the landowners down when their request was reasonable, but they were just late. So if we can reopen that, I'd feel really good about that.
I'd be happy to follow up with them.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
And I have one additional question for you, Amy. Did the city respond to the letter that we received tonight?
No, we received that at about 4 something this
Okay.
afternoon. So.
Can you let us know that you have for the next meeting, just so we know that
I
they were
will,
there?
and
Okay.
we've spoken before with them, so
Oh, okay.
we'll follow up and speak with them again about this
Okay.
letter.
Thank you.
Sure.
If there is no other questions, comments, is there a motion to bring this back, waive the first reading and waive the first reading and bring this back to November 20th? Right? That's what you're asking?
With the removal of the 7
Yes,
parcels
thank you.
indicated.
With the amendment to the parcels.
And will there be time to reach out to those 4 owners in that time, or?
Oh, for this, we
Before
won't
the
need it.
general plan update.
For this, we don't need it. This is just for the BAE rezoning. But we will follow up, and as soon as we can bring this back with either a group of general plan amendments, we're limited to the number of times a year we can bring in general plan amendments is our only restriction. I think it's 3 or 4, I always lose track, but we'll make sure they're in one of those
And then could you
groups.
please let me know when they've been notified, or
Okay.
reach out to them? Thank
Okay.
you.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Just for
All-
clarification, the motion is for waive first reading and adoption of ordinance 481. Just want to make sure that that represents the motion.
Yes.
And the second.
Yep.
And remove those.
And remove the
Those
7.
parcels.
I just want to make sure. we
Okay.
have
And
the-
removal of
Oh,
the
okay.
7.
Okay, good. Okay.
Oh.
Yep. There's a motion and a second. Is all those in favor, say aye.
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 Proceed forward.
Okay. Item E, reschedule the first city council meeting of January 1st, 2019 to January 2nd, 2019, which is a Wednesday due to the New Year's holiday.
Yeah, staff recommends rescheduling that meeting. We have a lot of projects on our agendas, and although I can't guarantee that there will be a lot on the agenda that month, it seems like we've been pretty busy, and I would hate to cancel a meeting that we could get some work done at. So I am recommending that we change it from January 1st, which is a holiday, to